Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
And it's our inner world, bottom line, that makes the difference for how we feel at the end of the day. We go wherever our mind does, but then you realize you don't have to do that. You can start to control your mind. Paying full attention to what you're doing now as a doorway into the optimal state. And the nice thing about attention is it's a muscle. It's a muscle of the mind.
That's Dr. Daniel Goleman. He popularized the term emotional intelligence in 1995, and since then, he's received numerous awards and accolades for his work. He's been recognized as one of the 10 most influential thinkers by the Wall Street Journal, and today, he's sharing some wisdom from his latest book, Optimal: How to Sustain Personal and Organizational Excellence Every Day. So you'll learn 1, the 5-minute technique for mastering your attention; 2, what special forces use to stay cool and calm; and 3, how to quiet the negative voice inside your head. I'm Pete Mikitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Dan. Dan, welcome.
Thank you, Pete. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk about some insights from your book, Optimal: How to Sustain Personal and Organizational Excellence Every Day. But first, I think when people hear and see your name, they think, oh, emotional intelligence. So you've been pursuing this stuff for, well, how long has it been?
The first book was in 95.
Yeah, there you go.
We were probably in nursery school, I would guess. I don't know.
95. I was 12 years old.
12 years old. There you go. So I've been doing it a long time, and it's really interesting. The research has gotten better. That's why I did this book. And when I did the first book, it was really kind of hypothetical, anecdotal. Now I wrote Optimal with Carrie Chernis, who was my fellow co-director of a consortium for research on emotional intelligence. And we're just basically harvesting lots of research. But in terms of how to be awesome at work, I think the most interesting research comes out of Harvard Business School. It's what we start the book with. It's a profile of a good day. And it comes from a study where they had hundreds of men and women keep a journal about what it was like today at work and what happened and how they felt. And from that, there's a kind of composite of a perfect day at work. And it goes like this. You're very engrossed and engaged in what you're doing. You're totally focused. You're not distracted. You like what you're doing. You feel good. You're in an upstate and you feel very connected with the people you're working with. That turns out to be a high productivity state. And leadership is the art of getting work done well through other people. So when you're in that state, you're helping your boss, and your boss knows it, but you're also being at your best.
Well, yeah, that sounds like a fantastic place to be. And so tell us, how often do we tend to get there as professionals? Like, what proportion of our days fall into this good day zone?
That's a question that we don't have an empirical answer for, but I would say it also varies a huge amount from person to person. And the lovely thing about this particular zone of high productivity is it's different from the famous flow state. The flow state is that one time you were absolutely at your best, you can't believe how well you did. The problem with flow is that it just happens to you. You can't make it happen. You can't produce it. The optimal state, on the contrary, is on the same spectrum, a little lower than flow, I would say, but your attention is very important. And in fact, attention is a way to get into that optimal state. Paying full attention to what you're doing now or what's most important to you right now as a doorway into the optimal state. And the nice thing about attention is it's a muscle. It's a muscle of the mind. It's like, when you go to the gym and you lift weights, every rep makes that muscle that much stronger. It's the same thing with the brain circuitry for attention. If you do an attention training or attention development exercise, you get better and better at it.
Okay, cool. Well, so I'd love to hear, could you tell us perhaps a story of someone who wasn't having such a good proportion of these optimal days, and they were able to do some cool brain training in order to turn that around, and what happened for them?
Well, the brain training I'll share with your listeners, it's very simple. Sometimes it's called mindfulness of the breath. It's just if you take any meditation method and you strip away the belief system from a cognitive science point of view, they're all developing attention. They're all helping you ignore distraction, which today is, worse than ever for people. We all have these little phones with us that carry the things that interest us the most, which are our biggest distractions. So by bringing your attention to your breath, the in-breath and the out-breath, and then the next breath, the in-breath and the out-breath, doing that systematically as a training, the same way you go to a gym, for example, it turns out that the research shows that this makes people better and better at bringing their focus to what they need to do right now. And that is how that state blossoms, the optimal state.
Oh, that's lovely. Could you share with us any particular studies or quantification of just how much better we get at that, and how much of a dose I need to do of this sort of a practice in order to reach those benefits?
Well, I did another book called Altered Traits, which reviewed all of the hard science about all this. And it shows there's basically a dose-response relationship. That is, the more you do it, the better you get, the better the benefits. I would recommend people who've never done this starting with just 5 minutes a day and then building up from there. The longer you do it, the better it is. And that means that the stronger the circuitry for paying attention gets. There was a study done at Harvard that shows people are distracted about 50% of the time, generally in life, more so at work, it turns out. And so if you want to be in a better state, if you want to be at your best at work, this is the kind of thing that will help you do that, because it helps you ignore distractions.
Oh, right. And with regard to this dose response curve, I'm wondering, is there a point of diminishing returns? Like after you're doing 6 hours, it's not doing much more for you than when you're doing 5 hours? Or where would we put that?
Well, frankly, very few people are going to do it 5 or 6 hours. You've got to be like a monk or a nun or something to do it that much. But if you do it over years, if you do it maybe a half hour a day, every day for a long time, you start to see, we've seen in our research, many more benefits from this.
All right. And can you tell us about the particulars for how that's done excellently? So for example, I've heard it said that it is ideal to have a posture that is alert yet relaxed, like you're not lying down. And if you're sitting, you're not hunched over and you're not standing at an attention. Can you talk to us a little bit about the nuances or the particulars that make a practice optimal?
Definitely. Well, before you get to your posture, let's get to where you're going to do this and when. You've got to find a time in your day when you can be someplace where no one's going to disturb you. You don't have to answer the phone. Kids aren't going to come in, or the dog's not going to jump on your lap, whatever it is. And you need a space you can control or can be controlled for you. And then the basic instruction, as you said, is just to sit up straight, not tense, relaxed, but with your spine straight. You can do it in a chair easily. And then bring your attention to your breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. And then the next breath, the in-breath and the out-breath. Then your mind is going to wander at some point. And when you notice it wandered, you bring it back to the next breath. That's the critical moment. That's the strengthener, because that's a moment of mindfulness. It's when you bring your mind back from distraction to the point of focus where you get the payoff from this.
All right. And if I can maybe vocalize a concern or response, but Dan, that sounds so boring.
People actually often say the opposite. They say, I can't control my mind. Rather than nothing happening, too much is happening. And the answer is good for you. That means you're finally paying attention to how your mind actually is. That's a normal beginning response. You start to see how active your mind actually is. Usually we don't notice it. We get carried away. We pay attention to this and to that and to this and that. We go wherever our mind does, but then you realize you don't have to do that. You can start to control your mind. So that's a normal response. People rarely say they're bored. Here's what you need to understand, Pete. The body is designed to have a fight or flight response, technically sympathetic nervous system arousal, to an emergency to stress. The problem for so many of us at work is that it's unremitting. It's relentless. You're stressed all the time. You never have a chance to do what the body needs, which is a recovery period. It's called parasympathetic arousal, and it's the downtime when the body rests and recovers. And if you never get that, you're going to become emotionally exhausted. It leads to burnout. The antidote is something I really urge people to do, which is to schedule something that's recovery for you, that's relaxing. Playing with a pet or a kid or being with a loved one or meditation, yoga, a walk in nature, whatever does it for you. But schedule it every day because it seems like it's irrelevant. Like you were saying, well, isn't this going to sound boring to people? No, this is important. This is your time to yourself to help yourself be ready for the next period of stress, which is so-called work.
And Dan, tell me, if some say the way I really like to unwind is by watching movies or playing video games or being on social media, does that count, Dan, or what do you think about that?
Well, I would say that those are other forms of distraction. Sorry, I don't think they count as recovery. Recovery is a time when you don't think about those things you otherwise ruminate about and worry about. So it needs to be something where you break the flow. Maybe it's a video game for you, but if you get really into the game and I'm very excited by the game, it's not recovery. Sorry. It's what we call eustress. It's a form of stress. It might be enjoyable, but still, it's not that total rest and relaxation and recovery. That's what you need.
Oh, no, I think that's well said, because I guess whether it's a movie or a game or whatever, some of them are intense. Like I'm shooting down 99 other people, and others are more chill. Like, okay, we're making some lines in Tetris. Right, here we go, do in the groove.
Yeah. But if you were to be measuring the physiology, your physiology, while you do that, it's just as bad as when you're stressed.
All right, so here we go. We got one key principle is that great days consist of doing stuff with uninterrupted, focused attention on a thing. And one way we can get better at that is by doing a mindfulness practice and making sure that we have some restorative breaks built into our world. Tell us, what are some of the other master keys to being optimal?
One of them goes back to Reinhold Niebuhr's Serenity Prayer. You know that prayer that's used in AA?
That's right, yeah.
Give me the wisdom to know the difference between the things I can change and the things I can't. And implicit in that is the ability to adjust to things we can't. So think about your boss at work. Some people are lucky and they have a great boss, and some people aren't so lucky. I've gone around the world asking different business groups, tell me about a boss you hated and a boss you loved and a quality that made that boss so awful or so good. And the bad boss is invariably kind of an emotional Neanderthal. And the good boss is, frankly, emotionally intelligent. It's someone who's available, who's empathetic, who's supportive, who gives you clear direction, things like that. So if you have a bad boss day in and day out, or a bad working circumstance, the question is, what can you do in that situation that you can't change, you have to live with, to make it more manageable for you? And what I would say is manage your internal state. I once had a boss that I hated, and I became an avid meditator in the morning so that when I went to work, I'd be at my best, so I could stand him, basically, and do my best work. And I would say that managing your internal state is something you have control over. I don't know if Pete, you're familiar with the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great book. And Frankl survived 4 years in Nazi concentration camps. And he said the way he did it was by managing his internal reaction to what was going on. And that's what saved him. And I think it's very profound because it implies any of us can have more control over our inner world. And it's our inner world, bottom line, that makes the difference for how we feel at the end of the day.
Oh, I love that. So let's talk about some of the practices by which we can manage our inner world and our emotional states. So you gave a scenario for there's a bad boss, someone you dread interacting with, seeing, experiencing. And one approach is doing some mindfulness meditation practice in preparation for that. What are some of the other super effective tools you suggest we can use for managing our own internal emotional states?
So the mindfulness, the breath, the attention training that I mentioned, the payoff from that is gradual. It's not like you're going to do that at work. You're going to do it, every day or a few days a week. And the benefits come slowly. I would say if you know you're going into a stressful encounter, you're going to be with that person you can't stand, for example, whoever that is. There's something that's used by special forces that I recommend. It's a controlled breathing method. It's called box breath. And it has a very powerful effect on your physiology. The box breath is sometimes called 4x4x4. You breathe in deeply so your belly expands. You hold your breath for as long as it's comfortable. And then you exhale for as long as it's comfortable. And if you do that 6 to 9 times, it actually changes your physiology, your body state from being tensed, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous arousal, to that recovery mode, to parasympathetic. It lowers heart rate, it lowers blood pressure, and it does it on the spot. And you can do it at work. It's not that obvious what you're doing. And it's used by special forces, for example, before they're going to go into a big whatever that they know they've got to prepare for. And I say, why not use it at work?
Yes. Oh, now, Dan, I'm loving this. So I've heard of box breathing and I've done it, and you've got some nuances there that I just delight in there. So now I had heard it suggested that you do, it's a box like your inhale time, your hold while inhaled, your exhale time, and your hold while exhaled are the same. So it's like you could draw a box with 4 completely equal sides. And so I had heard like, oh, do for like 4 seconds. And so you're saying, instead of doing 4 seconds, do it as long as you comfortably can on each of the 4 steps of the leg?
It might be 6 seconds for someone. Who knows? I don't think counting the seconds is the point. I think tuning into what's comfortable for you is more to the point. And if you can hold it longer than count of 4, do it. If you can hold your breath for longer than that, if you can exhale for longer than that. In other words, find what works for you in this.
All right. And also you said it 6 to 9 times. I love the specificity. And so like that has been shown in the research to get the job done. That amount of breathing will have a noticeable difference. Just 6 to 9 of those loops.
That's right.
Beautiful. So like 3-ish minutes and you've got a transformation. That's what I'm talking about, Dan. Thank you. All right. Well, hey, lay it on us. What else we got? We got the mindfulness meditation. We got the box breathing. What are some of your other faves for the emotional state management?
If you like a third approach, one thing that some people find very useful is monitoring that voice inside our head that gets us out of bed in the morning, has us propelled through our day, and then puts us to sleep at night. That's self-talk, it's called technically. And monitoring self-talk, you may find, for example, that you're being too critical of yourself. Many people are. You may fixate on the things you did wrong and not encourage the things or celebrate the things that you do well. That is a way that we make things even more stressful for ourselves. And so there's a wonderful book called Learned Optimism by a guy named Martin Seligman, a psychologist at Penn. And what he says is that you can talk back. You don't have to believe your thoughts. And if you find that you're being overly critical, that you ruminate about the things you got wrong, he'd say, remember the things you do right, the things that you do well. In other words, look at your strengths, not just at your weaknesses.
All right. So monitoring the self-talk, I hear you there in terms of our self-talk by like, oh, you always screw this up. You're such a loser. This is rubbish. Oh, this is not going to work out. It never works out. This is too stressful. How did I commit to this? How did I get myself into this? Okay. So we got that groove, not so encouraging. So when it comes to the monitoring, I mean, I can maybe notice, I got some negative self-talk going on here. When it comes to monitoring, what is the practice or protocol or approach
In cognitive therapy, which uses this approach, they often will tell someone, notice what you keep telling yourself. Very often, the critiques are repetitive. It's the same thing in various forms over and over and over again. And prepare yourself, rehearse something you could say back to those thoughts. Like, I screwed that thing up at work, and that proves to me, because of my negative self-talk, that I'm an idiot. But what could you say to yourself when you notice you're doing that negativity thing? You could say, actually, usually I don't mess up. Usually I do pretty well. And I remember this time and that time and that time that I actually did just fine. And so you purposely bring that to mind to counteract the negative thoughts.
Okay, so we've got some rehearsal in advance. Lay it on us in terms of, if I've got some self-talk that says, oh, I'm so tired, I really just don't feel like dealing with this. This is so overwhelming. What are some good responses?
So it sounds to me, Pete, that you're evoking a situation where it's kind of relentless and you're feeling burned out. Is that right?
It could be burnout. It could just be dread or reluctance or procrastination in general. It's like, oh, this is a task I don't feel like dealing with. And here it is. Ugh.
Okay, so maybe you remind yourself, why do I need to do this? Why is this important? This is part of my job, maybe. And what is my state right now, you might ask yourself. And what can I do to upgrade it so that I can be up to the task? I think one thing you can do is pay more attention to what you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you're letting happen, I suppose, is that your attention is just wandering. Like, oh, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to do this. You're just basically letting yourself be distracted. And so you could intentionally up your focus right then. I don't love this thing that I have to do, but I have to do it for this reason. And so I'm going to really do it. I'm going to pay full attention to what I need to do.
All right. Well, Dan, tell us, when it comes to having optimal days, we've covered a few things here. Where should we go next?
Well, it turns out that emotional intelligence allows this more often. Emotional intelligence is four parts: self-awareness, managing your emotions, empathy, and relationship management. That's the whole package. And some of us are better at some parts and less good at others. So I've been talking about the first two parts, self-awareness and self-management, tuning into what you're feeling and then managing those feelings. But there are other aspects of self-management. It's not just about reducing the negative emotions, like I can't stand this, I hate my boss, whatever it may be. That's part of it. But another part is marshaling positive emotions, being optimistic, being positive about what's happening, keeping your eye on goals that matter to you. Maybe you don't like this particular part of your job, but you know that you want to advance at work. Maybe that's a long-term goal. So you remember that at that time, and you tell yourself, this is part of the job I really don't like, but I have to do a good job because I'm going up the ladder, perhaps. That's one way of doing it. Then there's empathy. Empathy is really interesting, Pete. There are three kinds of empathy. One is cognitive empathy. I understand how you think about things. I see your perspective. AI is very good at cognitive empathy. But then there's emotional empathy. I know how the person in front of me feels because I get a sense of it in my body. They're actually, when you have eye contact in a real interaction face to face, you establish a kind of invisible, instantaneous, unconscious bridge, brain to brain. And emotions pass very effectively on that bridge. So you tune in to what's going on and you pick it up. That's emotional empathy. The third kind of empathy is actually the one that we want in our boss. It's called empathic concern. I not only know how you think and feel, I care about you. And these are each based in different parts of the brain. So if you have a boss who has this third kind of empathy, you feel you can trust that person, you feel rapport with them. If you are a boss, if you have direct reports, and you're that kind of person, then the people who work for you are more likely to give their best effort because they like you as a person. They feel that you support them. You might even inspire them. You might articulate some meaning or purpose to what we're doing that is even greater than the job itself. And that turns out to get the best efforts out of people. But at the very least, you can guide them, you can coach them, you can help them get better at what they're doing. All of that makes people feel really good about their boss. So that's the third part. And then there's putting that all together to have effective relationships.
All right. Well, I'm curious, Dan. Let's say folks, their hearts are in the right place. They would like to demonstrate this and provide this for the people they care about in their lives, their colleagues, their friends and family. Assuming that's there, what are some ways folks fall short in terms of like maybe they're unconscious, there are things that they're doing or not doing that are just sabotaging their ability to effectively be empathetic, empathic in a way that folks can receive and appreciate?
Well, one of the common colds of this is having relationships that are purely transactional, where you only talk about what needs to be done. You never talk about the person. How are you doing? What's your life like? In fact, one thing that I advise, I'm often asked, what can we do when we work only by Zoom? We never meet each other. In the old days, or maybe still in some workplaces, you have a 9-to-5 situation where you're with someone 5 days a week for all those hours, and it's just natural that you find out about them as a person. You get to know them. It's the let's have lunch together, let's have a beer after work, or just around the cooler, water cooler, whatever it is. But casual conversation matters because it knits people together. And if you don't have that, if you're working by Zoom, I think it's important, particularly if you're a leader, say, of a team, to replace that with a one-on-one with the individuals on that team, for example, where you talk about the person, not the job. But what do you want from life, from your career, for example, or how can I help you? That starts a very different kind of connection.
Dan's about to share some of his favorite things. One of my favorite things is our sponsors. Check them out.
One sponsored checkout is Bamboo HR. I love owning my own business, but I do not love doing government compliancy things. HR is hard, but Bamboo HR is easy. Bamboo HR is a powerful yet flexible all-in-one HR solution for your growing business. Wrangling benefits, onboarding, performance, recruiting, reporting, vacation time, trainings, oh my, can take hours. But with Bamboo HR, it can take mere minutes. Setting up a demo account is ridiculously easy. I didn't have to coordinate calendars to schedule a demo with a sales rep. Nope. I just created a sample account with sample data within 3 minutes of visiting their website, so I could immediately behold its vast capabilities. The software is genuinely beautiful in its breadth and simplicity. No wonder 34,000 companies trust Bamboo HR with their HR needs. So reclaim your time and check out the free demo at bamboohr.com/free demo. See for yourself all that Bamboo HR can do and how truly affordable it can be too. That's bamboohr.com/free demo. One more time, bamboohr.com/free demo.
One sponsored checkout is EarthBreeze. I recently saw a Netflix documentary that talks about all the plastic that we throw away and we try to recycle, but it doesn't really get recycled. So I've been trying to reduce my plastic, and the most wonderful way that I've been doing so has been skipping those gigantic laundry detergent bottles for EarthBreeze detergent sheets. EarthBreeze detergent comes in super convenient cardboard, plastic-free packaging, so it's much more eco-friendly than your normal detergent. And I love how portable and quick and easy they are, and I save a pretty reasonable amount of time skipping having to carefully pour and measure liquid detergent into the machine by just tossing a quick and easy sheet in there. I personally like their scent-free version, so check out EarthBreeze for an easy way to get clean clothes without the plastic waste and get 40% off with your subscription at earthbreeze.com/awesome. That's earthbreeze.com/awesome. All righty. Well, now could you tell us about a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
The first person to benefit from compassion or caring about other people is the person who feels it.
Okay. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
Well, one thing I like talking about are the studies that establish the social brain circuitry, which are relatively new in neuroscience. And one of them had to do with a neuron in a monkey's brain that only fired when that monkey lifted its arm. This is a lab in Italy. One day, the neuron was firing, the brain cell was firing, and the monkey wasn't moving. And they didn't know why. Then they realized it was a hot day in Italy. A lab assistant gone out for a gelato. He's standing in front of the monkey. And every time he raises his arm to take a lick of the gelato, the monkey's brain cell for that same movement fired. That was the discovery of mirror neurons. And it turns out that the human brain is peppered with mirror neurons. And they tell us what the person in front of us is not just doing and intending, but what they're feeling. Mirror neurons are a very important aspect of the social brain and of empathy.
And a favorite book?
I'll say Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
Okay. And a favorite tool, something you use to be awesome at your job?
Listening.
Okay. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
I'd point them to my website, danielgoleman.info.
Okay. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Pay attention.
All right. Well, Dan, this is fun. I wish you many optimal days.
Thank you. Likewise, Pete. Great.
I think the most interesting piece of this conversation for me was the distinction between doing what you feel like doing and true relaxation and recovery. Often when I think about taking a break, I want to immediately do the thing that I've been wanting to do, but have put to the side as I've focused in on the task at hand. So maybe it's like, oh, I'm super curious about the news or this thing on social media or this game or activity or this sequence of text messages, how that's unfolding, whatever. And these things, while being what I want to do, can feel like a break, and breaks are intended for relaxation and recovery. And yet, from a nervous system excitement, de-stressing perspective, they may not actually be getting the job done. And what really provides total relaxation and recovery may feel, to some minds and personalities, kind of boring. But that is a good, helpful boring, which will produce a state of rejuvenation that helps us get after it better when the time comes. So a nice little distinction from Dr. Daniel Goleman. If you'd like to see a summary write-up of this conversation and others, please sign up for the Gold Nugget email list found at awesomeatyourjob.com, where you can hear the actionable wisdom that Dan shared in an easy, quick email you can read right in your email inbox, as well as unlock the whole vault, the archive of these 950 plus such summary Gold Nugget messages. And if you want to check out the transcript or links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP959. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.